Emotional, suspenseful, realistic, slow burn revenge. I never imagined that the people who taught me the meaning of family would be the same ones who taught me how deep betrayal could cut. For years, I blamed myself. I told myself I was too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. That's what they always said anyway. My name doesn't matter. What matters is this. I was the kind of daughter everyone praised. Responsible, loyal, the one who showed up, the one who fixed things quietly while everyone else argued and walked away. And that's exactly why they chose me. I grew up believing family was supposed to be safe. Messy, yes, but safe. I believed love meant sacrifice, and loyalty meant staying silent when things felt wrong. That belief shaped every decision I made well into adulthood, especially in my relationships. If you've ever watched relationship drama unfold in your own family and thought, at least we're still together, you'll understand why I ignored the signs for so long. Because betrayal doesn't always come screaming. Sometimes it whispers. It started after my father passed away. Suddenly, everything shifted. My mother became distant. My siblings, people I once shared secrets and late-night conversations with, started treating me like an inconvenience. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I walked into a room. Plans were made without me. Decisions were announced, not discussed. When I asked questions, I was told I was imagining things. You're reading too much into it. You always make everything so dramatic. That word, dramatic, became their favorite weapon. At first, I laughed it off. Families go through phases, right? Stress brings out the worst in people. That's what I told myself while swallowing the discomfort and smiling through dinners that felt colder every time. But something didn't sit right. Money conversations suddenly excluded me. Important paperwork appeared already signed. I was encouraged, no, pushed, to trust them. After all, we were family, and family doesn't lie to each other. That's what they said. Looking back now, I can see how carefully it was all done. The gaslighting, the subtle manipulation, the way my concerns were twisted into proof that I was the problem. It was betrayal wrapped in politeness, served slowly over time. If this were one of those Reddit stories you scroll through late at night, you might already be screaming at the screen for me to walk away. But when you're inside it, when it's your family, your history, your blood, it's never that simple. I still believed loyalty would protect me. I still believed honesty would win. I still believed karma would sort things out without me having to do anything at all. I was wrong. Because the moment I finally uncovered the truth was the moment I realized I had been betrayed in ways I never thought possible. And that was only the beginning. Before everything fell apart, I genuinely believed I was lucky. Not because my family was perfect, but because I thought we were honest with each other. We argued, sure, we disagreed, but I believed deep down that blood meant something, that when it came down to it, we would choose each other over pride, money, or resentment. I was the middle child, the fixer, the one who smoothed things over when my mother and siblings clashed. I was the one who showed up early, stayed late, and handled the responsibilities no one else wanted. When problems appeared, everyone somehow looked in my direction. And I didn't mind, at least not at first. After my father's death, I stepped up even more. I helped manage household matters. I handled phone calls. I organized documents. I took time off work when no one else could. I did it out of love, never imagining that my willingness would later be used against me. My mother leaned on me heavily during that time. She cried on my shoulder, told me I was the only one she trusted, the only one who understood her. Those words mattered to me more than I realized, because trust makes betrayal hurt more. My siblings, on the other hand, started changing in quieter ways. They became distant, calculating. Conversations felt strategic. I noticed how they exchanged glances when Nunny came up, how decisions were suddenly framed as already settled. Whenever I questioned something, the tone shifted. "You don't need to worry about that. We've got it handled. You're overthinking again." It was subtle, so subtle that I doubted myself. That's how manipulation works. It makes you feel unreasonable for noticing patterns. It slowly turns your instincts into something you're ashamed of. This wasn't loud relationship drama. It was slow, suffocating tension, the kind that eats at you late at night when the house is quiet and you replay conversations in your head wondering what you missed. I started keeping notes, just small things, dates, comments, who said what. I told myself I was being practical, not paranoid. Still, every time I brought up concerns, I was met with the same response. Why couldn't I just trust them? Because family shouldn't need proof. Because loyalty means staying silent. Because questioning them was seen as betrayal, my betrayal. That irony still makes me sick. What hurt most wasn't the disagreements. It was the way my emotions were dismissed, how my feelings became evidence that I was unstable, difficult, too sensitive to be taken seriously. That was the moment I realized something was deeply wrong, not because of one big lie, but because of 100 small ones. This wasn't just family conflict. This was slow, oppressive betrayal. And without realizing it, I was being positioned as the problem in a story where I hadn't done anything wrong. If you've ever read Reddit stories about revenge or karma and wondered how people don't see it coming sooner, this is how. You're too busy trying to keep the peace to notice the ground shifting beneath your feet. And by the time you do, the damage is already done. Emotional, suspenseful, realistic, slow-burn revenge. At some point, the feelings stopped being confusion and turned into dread. I remember the exact moment it happened. We were sitting at the kitchen table talking about paperwork related to my father's estate. Nothing dramatic, just practical details. Or at least, that's what I thought. My brother casually mentioned a decision that had already been made, a decision I had never heard about. When I asked when this was discussed, the room went quiet. Not awkward quiet, not surprised quiet, calculated quiet. The kind where everyone waits to see who will speak first and who will fold. My mother smiled and said, "We didn't think you needed to be involved." That sentence hit harder than any argument ever could. Not involved? After everything I had done, after months of putting my life on hold, after being told repeatedly that I was the most responsible one. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't react. I couldn't. Years of conditioning kicked in, telling me to stay calm, to not make a scene, to keep the peace. That's how they knew they could keep pushing. From that point on, information became currency, shared selectively, weaponized strategically. Every conversation felt like a test I didn't know I was taking. When I asked direct questions, I got vague answers. When I asked for clarity, I was accused of creating unnecessary relationship drama. My concerns were reframed as emotional instability. My boundaries were labeled as hostility. This wasn't a single act of betrayal. It was a system designed to make me doubt myself while they moved freely behind my back. I started noticing how often my siblings spoke for me, how they told others what I wanted or what I agreed to without ever asking me. I watched as my mother nodded along, letting it happen, sometimes even reinforcing it. "You know how she is," she'd say to others. "She gets overwhelmed easily." Those words followed me everywhere. At night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed conversations on loop. I wondered if I really was imagining things. Maybe this was normal. Maybe this was just how families handled stress. But then I found something I wasn't supposed to see. It was an email thread, not sent to me, but about me. I didn't read it all at once. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too much. But the parts I did read changed everything. They had been discussing major decisions for months, financial decisions, legal decisions, decisions that directly affected my future, and they agreed collectively to keep me out of it, not to protect me, but because they believed I'd cause problems. That was the moment denial ended, because betrayal feels different when it's documented, when you can see your name typed out like a liability, when the people you defended are calmly planning around you as if you don't exist. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I went quiet. I listened more, spoke less, observed everything. If this were one of those revenge-driven Reddit stories, this would be the part where the protagonist explodes, where everything comes out at once. But real life doesn't work that way. In real life, the smartest move is to let them believe you're still in the dark. And that's exactly what I did. The hardest part about staying quiet wasn't the anger. It was the loneliness. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from sitting in the same room as people who are actively betraying you and smiling like nothing is wrong. Every laugh felt forced. Every family dinner felt like a performance where I was the only one who didn't get the script. I watched them closely, listened carefully, and the more I did, the clearer everything became. They weren't just excluding me, they were rewriting the story. My siblings began hinting to extended family that I was unstable, that I was struggling emotionally after my father's death, that I couldn't be trusted with serious matters. My mother never directly said it, but she never corrected it either. Silence can be a form of betrayal, too. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon, one of those quiet days where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. My aunt called me, her voice hesitant, confused. She asked why I had agreed to give up my share. I remember gripping my phone so tightly my fingers went numb. Give up my share of what? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Then she said the words that shattered everything I had been holding together. They told her I didn't want it. They said I felt it was best for everyone. They said I trusted them completely. None of it was true. That was the moment the full weight of the betrayal hit me, not as suspicion, not as fear, but as fact, clear, undeniable, and cruel. After I hung up, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. My body felt heavy, like it was shutting down to protect me from feeling too much at once. Everything I had ignored suddenly made sense. The secrecy, the gaslighting, the careful way they managed information. This wasn't chaos, this was strategy. I confronted them that evening, calmly, quietly. I asked one simple question. Why did you tell people I agreed to something I never agreed to? The reaction told me everything. No denial, no apology, just irritation. My brother sighed and said, "You're blowing this out of proportion." My sister accused me of causing unnecessary relationship drama, and my mother looked at me with disappointment. If you trusted us, this wouldn't be an issue. That sentence broke something inside me, because trust had been the very thing they exploited. I realized then that I was never meant to be part of the decision-making process. I was meant to be compliant, quiet, useful but powerless. That night I finally cried, not because I felt weak, but because I understood the truth. My family didn't see me as an equal. They saw me as an obstacle, and for the first time, I stopped trying to fix it. I stopped explaining myself, stopped defending my intentions, stopped begging to be understood. Instead, I made a decision they never expected. I would let them continue, because when people believe they've already won, they get careless. And that's when karma begins to work. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't demand justice. I didn't even act angry. That was the first mistake they made, assuming my silence meant surrender. On the surface, nothing changed. I still showed up to family gatherings, still answered messages politely, still nodded along when they spoke about plans that supposedly included everyone. I played the role they had written for me so well that they stopped watching me altogether. And that's when I started paying attention. I gathered information quietly: emails, documents, timelines. I reviewed everything I had access to and made sure I legally had access to it. I didn't steal, I didn't hack, I simply observed and saved what was already there. People who betray you often believe they're smarter than you. That belief makes them sloppy. They contradicted themselves constantly. One sibling would say one thing, another would say something else. Dates didn't match, numbers didn't add up, stories shifted depending on who they were talking to, and I let them. I asked innocent questions, clarifying questions, the kind that sound harmless but force people to explain themselves just a little too much. Every answer revealed another crack in their version of events. This wasn't explosive revenge. This was patience. I also did something else, something they never anticipated. I stepped back emotionally. No more over-explaining, no more defending myself, no more trying to be understood. I became neutral, calm, observant. That shift unsettled them. They started checking in more often, asking if I was okay. They mistook my emotional distance for guilt, for acceptance, for weakness. In reality, it was clarity. I sought quiet advice from professionals, not family. I asked questions without naming names. I learned my rights. I learned where the lines were. I learned exactly how much damage had already been done and how much more they were risking by continuing. That's the thing about slow burn revenge. It doesn't feel like revenge at all. It feels like preparation. They continued telling others that I had stepped away by choice, that I wanted peace, that I trusted them to handle things. Those lies spread easily because they sounded reasonable, until they didn't. Because lies require consistency, and consistency was the one thing they no longer had. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't defend myself publicly. I let their stories collide with reality on their own. This wasn't humiliating them. It wasn't about winning an argument. It was about letting the truth surface naturally without me having to force it. If you've ever read revenge-focused Reddit stories, you know the most satisfying karma isn't loud. It's inevitable. And by the time they realized something was wrong, they were already standing on ground they couldn't escape from. Karma didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It came quietly, disguised as routine questions and unexpected conversations, the kind that seem harmless until they aren't. The first crack appeared when an outside party asked for clarification. Nothing dramatic, just a simple request to confirm details everyone had assumed were already settled. Details my siblings had explained differently to different people. Suddenly, the stories didn't line up. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I heard about it afterwards. The confusion, the uncomfortable pauses, the subtle tension that filled the air when they realized they couldn't agree on what they had supposedly decided together. For the first time, their confidence wavered. They started calling me more often, asking vague questions, testing my tone, trying to figure out how much I knew. But I stayed exactly the same, polite, distant, cooperative, non-threatening. That made them nervous. Soon after, someone else reached out to me directly, not because I asked them to, but because something didn't feel right. They wanted my confirmation, my version, the truth, and I told it, calmly, factually, without accusation or emotion. I didn't frame it as revenge. I didn't describe betrayal. I simply stated what I had and had not agreed to. I provided documentation when asked. Nothing more, nothing less. That was enough. Because once the truth enters the room, lies start collapsing under their own weight. The shift was immediate. People stopped taking my siblings' words at face value. Questions increased. Meetings were delayed. Decisions were revisited. Every step forward required more explanation than before, and explanations were not their strength.
The irony was painful to watch. They had spent months painting me as emotional and unreliable, only to unravel under the pressure of their own inconsistencies. The calmer I remained, the more unstable they appeared. That's how karma works sometimes, not as punishment, but as exposure. My mother tried to intervene. She asked me privately why I couldn't just let it go, why I had to complicate things. Her voice carried frustration, but also fear. For the first time, she wasn't in control. I didn't argue with her. I didn't defend myself. I simply said, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just answering honestly when asked." She had no response to that, because honesty isn't aggressive, truth isn't drama, and yet it was dismantling everything they had built. The consequences weren't explosive, but they were undeniable. Trust eroded, authority weakened, the certainty they relied on disappeared, and the most painful part for them, they couldn't blame me, because I hadn't attacked, I hadn't accused, I hadn't sought revenge. I had simply stopped protecting them from the truth. And once that protection was gone, karma took over.
After everything came to light, I expected to feel victorious. I didn't. What I felt was quiet. The chaos I had lived with for months, maybe years, slowly faded, leaving behind an unfamiliar stillness. No more constant anxiety, no more rehearsed conversations in my head, no more bracing myself every time my phone buzzed. The truth had done its work. My siblings stopped reaching out the way they used to. Conversations became careful, distant. They no longer spoke for me. They no longer assumed my silence meant consent. The power they once held over the narrative was gone. And strangely, that was enough. My relationship with my mother changed the most, not because she apologized, she didn't, but because she stopped pretending. The disappointment, the control, the manipulation she once hid behind concern became visible, and once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. I stopped trying to earn her approval. That was the real revenge, not because it hurt her, but because it freed me. For the first time, I understood that betrayal doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes it comes from fear, from insecurity, from people protecting their own comfort at the expense of someone else's trust. Understanding that didn't excuse what they did, but it allowed me to stop carrying their guilt as my own. I began setting boundaries, quietly, firmly. I didn't explain them, I didn't negotiate them, I simply lived by them. And when people pushed back, I paid attention. That taught me more than any argument ever could. If this story sounds like one of those Reddit stories about revenge or karma, that's because real life rarely gives us dramatic endings. It gives us clarity instead, and clarity is far more powerful. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get closure in the way movies promise. But I got something better. Peace. The relationship drama that once consumed me no longer defined my days. I focused on my own life, my work, my friendships, the relationships that didn't require me to shrink or stay silent to be loved. That's the lesson no one talks about. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away without explaining yourself. And once I did, I realized something I wish I'd known earlier. The people who betray you often expect you to stay the same. They never expect you to outgrow them. Today, my life looks nothing like it did back then, not because everything magically improved, but because I stopped fighting battles that were never meant to be won. I see my family occasionally, cordial, polite, distant. The tension is still there, lingering beneath the surface, but it no longer controls me. They don't get access to my thoughts, my plans, or my emotions anymore. And that boundary changed everything. For a long time, I wondered if walking away meant I lost, if choosing peace over confrontation meant they got away with it. That thought haunted me, especially on quiet nights when memories resurfaced. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. People who live by manipulation are never at peace. People who rely on betrayal are always afraid of being exposed. That's their punishment. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my life without needing their validation. I learned to trust my instincts again, the same instincts they once tried to convince me were flaws. I learned that love doesn't demand silence, and loyalty doesn't require self-erasure. If you're listening to this and it feels familiar, if you're living inside your own version of this relationship drama, please hear this. You're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, and you're not wrong for noticing patterns that hurt you. Family betrayal cuts deeper than most wounds because it attacks the place we feel safest, but it also teaches us the most important lesson about revenge and karma, one that no dramatic confrontation ever could. You don't heal by proving them wrong. You heal by no longer needing to. The moment I stopped explaining myself, the moment I stopped defending my intentions, the moment I stopped waiting for them to change, that's when my life finally began to move forward. This story may sound like one of those Reddit stories people read for entertainment, but for me, it was real, and the ending wasn't applause or justice or apologies. It was freedom. Freedom to choose healthier relationships, freedom to walk away from manipulation, freedom to live without fear of betrayal lurking behind every smile. And if karma has a final form, it's this: watching the people who underestimated you realize they no longer have any control over your life. So I'll leave you with this question. If the people closest to you betrayed your trust quietly, not with anger, but with strategy, what would you do? Would you fight? Would you expose them? Or would you do what I did and choose peace while karma handled the rest? I'd really like to know.